but we didn't know that there were genes who closely resembled the reactivation of the breast cancer gene. When I was with NIH, National Institute of Health in Washington, D.C., we discovered the NM23 gene. And that gene says that there are some women who will develop breast cancer and they'll die from it, and there are some women who will develop breast cancer and they'll live. And what's the difference? The NM23 gene, which means that the women who don't have that, no matter what we do, no matter what treatment we give them, chemo, radiation, they're going to die. You've always wondered, why do some people develop cancer and they live, and why do other people develop cancer and they die? A lot of it's on the DNA spiral. But what's amazing, and what Linus Pauling discovered when he discovered the double helix, was that you can actually change the outcome and the fate of your DNA spiral by taking antioxidants, by eating fruits and vegetables that contain phytochemicals, by taking arginine and taking phytochemical ingredients such as those found in fruits and vegetables that actually go in like Pac-Man and eat the cancer cells. Everybody in this room has cancer at all times. We all have cancer. We have 100 million cancer cells in us. And the only time that they're eradicated is when you go from REM into delta sleep. And those little Pac-Men, which are called NK killer cells, come along and they aggressively eat your cancer. If you get less than 8 hours sleep a night, guess what happens? The Pac-Men can't eat the cancer cells. So continuously getting less amount of sleep than you require increases your risk of getting cancer. And ladies, you'll love this. Women need 2 hours more sleep a night than men. And you can say, I said that too. God, you say women go, I told you. Don't wake me up. So getting 8 hours sleep a night is mandatory to reduce the risk of cancer. The main risk of cancer in the United States, now that we've gone from, the cancer rate has gone from 1 in 4 to 1 in 3 and is now 1 in 2. Within the borders of the United States, the cancer rate is 50-50. Half the people in this room will develop cancer. That's a very bad statistic. And it's the highest rate of cancer in the world. We have the highest rate of cancer of any country in the world, and we're the richest country in the world. And that's why we have the highest rate of cancer, because we're the richest country in the world. Because we can afford to eat foods that are killing us. When you feed humans foods that stimulate fat-storing mechanisms, which are called lipoprotein lipase, neuropeptide Y, and leptin, I'm sure you've heard of some of those lovely hormones. Yes, I was just talking about LPL the other day on the bus. I said, you know, when we have a nation that can afford to become fatter and fatter and fatter, and we are the fattest people on earth, we increase our risk of cancer and autoimmune diseases, accelerate the aging process by 60%, and all sorts and manners of aging protocols. So the point is, why do we want to increase muscle mass with arginine? Why do we want to decrease body fat? Because when you have a fat cell that looks like that, inside the fat cell are circulating hormones. And those circulating hormones elevate your risk of hormonal cancers, which are breast and prostate. And in the United States, we have the highest rate of breast and prostate cancer in the world because of these circulating hormones. And the American Cancer Society figured that out about 5 years ago, and have since stated, in order to reduce your risk of developing cancer, which is 50-50, you have to reduce the size of the fat cell on your body, not your weight, not your total weight. If you take any of those athletes, Brandy, and you put them on a scale, or Ron, or Linda Wood Hoyt, the scale will say you're fat. They're fat. They're holding 2 to 4% body fat. But the scale will say you're fat, because it doesn't differentiate between muscle and fat. So increasing muscle mass and decreasing body fat increases longevity. And that's why after age 23 it becomes so difficult to lose your body fat, because humans are genetically pre-wired to add body fat. You cannot change 100 million years of speciation no matter how much you want to. So we have an amino acid whose capability to extend lifespan is phenomenal, but it must be used safely and with caution and with respect to humans. If you want to live a longer time, if you want to prevent cancer, you reduce your intake of foods that stimulate fat storage. Do you know what the most fattening food on this planet is? I know Rudy Meister knows. A rice cake. A rice cake is the most fattening food on this planet. You know what the least fattening food on this planet is? Ice cream. Women look like they're writing ice cream. It doesn't have anything to do with logic. It has to do with nutritional anthropology. When you eat a rice cake, which has very low calories and little to no fat, it stimulates fat-storing mechanisms in humans, lipoprotein lipase, neuropeptide Y, and leptin. Harvard did an 8-year study with 35,000 people. And the result of this study was the most important thing humans can do to stay alive longer is to eat foods that don't stimulate fat, which are high glycemic foods. A rice cake is high glycemic, not because of the components, but because it triggers human fat-storing mechanisms. It has nothing to do with calories, it has nothing to do with fat. Why do you think diets don't work? We know statistically 98% of diets don't work. Why is that? Because they make no sense. They're illogical. They divide up food into bizarre categories and say, eat this, don't eat that. That has nothing to do with how humans were formed in nutritional anthropology. That has nothing to do with how your body works. It's illogical. The human body was formed to put on body fat after age 23 and reduce muscle mass. And what we have to do is reverse that mechanism. So by eating high glycemic foods, which are at glycemicfoodlist.com, we have now categorized over 10,000 foods as to what's high glycemic and not. We own the largest copyrighted list of glycemic foods in the world. You can find that at glycemic.com. It costs $6,000 per food to clinically test it. So what we'll do is we'll take a rice cake and we'll have 15 people eat it, and every 15 minutes we'll test their blood levels of blood glucose and insulin and LPL and all the other fat-storing enzymes in humans. And those foods that stimulate become the list of no-no foods, which are high glycemic. And the foods that don't stimulate insulin, blood glucose, and LPL are low glycemic. And that's why it took us 10 years to develop a low glycemic base for the L-arginine. And that's how I got into glycemic research, because when we gave L-arginine to people, sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And what was the missing factor? It was people who were eating high glycemic foods with the arginine. It didn't work. So arginine has to be in a low glycemic base. And if you take L-arginine twice a day, with food is all right during the daytime, about 5 grams a day. You can eat food with it. And then if you take L-arginine at night at bedtime, exactly a half an hour before you fall asleep or it won't cross the blood-brain barrier, if you follow this matrix, you'll get phenomenal benefits. You don't have to take as much L-arginine as an athlete does, because you might not want that much muscle mass. Another additional issue with L-arginine is age. If you're under 23 years of age, you cannot take L-arginine at night. You cannot re-stimulate growth hormone in someone under age 23 because it throws the entire bodybuilding and bone formation structure of humans off. So it's very, very important not to give anyone under age 23 arginine at night or over 5 grams of arginine in the daytime. So I tell you what, we're going to wrap this up, but if you have any questions, I'll take some of your questions now and then some outside. Does anybody have any questions on L-arginine? Absolutely not. You really don't want to re-stimulate growth hormone in humans and then have the baby ingest some of that excess pituitary release GH. No pregnant women can take growth hormone. Oh, I wonder who asked that. Okay. I know, he said, what are the benefits of your L-arginine? I'm going to read you what took us 20 years to get from the Food and Drug Administration and the Federal Trade Commission, which no one in the history of L-arginine has been allowed to say other than us. And it's quite phenomenal, and I'm quite pleased that legal claims is related to L-arginine patent number 6,608,109, patent holder Dr. Ian DeWeese Allen, as determined by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the former chief counsel for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Legal claims for our L-arginine are enhances muscle growth, supports muscle growth,